Now we're going to create a library of functions that we want to perform with fractions. So on the fraction, what I would like to do is be able to add two fractions together. I would like to be able to subtract them, multiply, divide them, do different jobs. I am not going to include them as part of the fraction class, mainly because this is just one single fraction, and when I do add, I need two fractions in there, so I'm going to actually create a library routine to do that, and it also gives me the opportunity to introduce a new technique to you. So I'm going to create a fraction library to perform the actions that I want. So if I choose File and New Class, New File, Java Class, and if I call it F Library, job done. So I've got my library. The first difference from anything we've done with point and fraction so far is the fact that I'm not going to create a constructor. There's going to be no library constructor at all, and in my main program I am not going to have new F library. I don't want a new library all the time. All I want is just one library which works with fractions. So we will see the aggravation that will cause later. So I'm not going to use a constructor, but what I do want is my methods to add, subtract, multiply and divide, and I'm going to create those now. So they're all going to be public methods. Public. They're all going to return fractions because we're going to add two items together and return a fraction. So fraction add, and I need two fractions, fraction A and fraction B, and that's my add function. And I'm going to copy that as is. I know we've got an error. I'm going to discuss the error shortly. You probably already know what it means, but I want to go over it. So I'm going to paste this. So instead of add, I'm going to have that as sub. Again, I'm going to paste another one for multiply. Each one of them is going to take two fractions, perform an operation, and return a result. And finally, div. Now I have to be careful with this. There might already be a function called div. However, it is part of the fraction library, so we will be okay. Fingers crossed. So there I've got my four functions: add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Each of them takes two fractions. And as the error message says, there's a missing return statement. I need to return the fraction. Now I could just type in there return, but I need a fraction to return, and I don't want to return A, and I don't want to return B, and I don't want to change A or B. I need another fraction. So before I try to return something, I'm going to set up a fraction. So a fraction is a new, I need to give it a name. Result is a new fraction, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to 1. I could have set it to anything I wanted. 0, 0 would be good, but 0, 0 was a sort of default point. So when I'm sort of error checking, I want to know roughly what's going on and what's going wrong. So if I set this to be a new fraction as 1, 1, then it's going to give me a clue as to what's going wrong. And if then I return that result, that takes away the error message. So all I need to do is do exactly the same in all of my functions, methods. You'll have to forgive me. I keep using the word function and procedure when I really mean method. So there we go. I've got my library basically set up. I've got my 4 functions: add, subtract, multiply and divide. They each take 2 fractions, a and b, perform an operation on them and return the result, but I had to set up a temporary fraction as a result to store the result of adding, subtracting, multiplying or dividing. So we're going to move on in the next video to see how we can play with these in our main program.